first, I must say, to inform my readers, those who follow my work, that I'm very glad for being able to establish a personal connection with some of the really great names in the contemporary revival of quantum physics ontology. By quantum physics ontology, I mean that it's more and more accepted today that quantum physics is not just a method of calculation, so the old Copenhagen motto, just calculate and shut up, don't raise ontological questions, no longer holds. And the guys who are raising these questions are wonderful guys. There, I think, genuinely interested in what I have to say from my very general standpoint. So I'm in contact with them, Carlo Rovelli, his partner Francesca Vidotto, Lee Smolin, and so on, and Sean Carroll, and so on. And this brings some joy in today's terrifying world. Another thing, you mentioned the Borromean knot of Lacanian psychoanalysis, Hegelian dialectic, and critique of ideology. With all the importance of critique of ideology, for reasons we don't have time to go into now, I find it problematic, more and more problematic to apply this term. Because critique still sounds to me, especially the way this works today, as what the young Marx, the Marx whom otherwise I don't like, the Marx of German ideology and so on, was criticizing in a quite justified way. For me, critique shouldn't be opposed to analysis. Critique, for me, sounds, I will use a horrible word, and I don't think he is a bad guy, but I disagree with him on this point. Critique sounds too Habermasian for me, in the sense that it implicitly mobilizes some normative dimension. That's, for example, the point of Habermas against the first generation of Frankfurt School, Adorno, Horkheimer, that dialectic of enlightenment, okay, interesting, but they don't bring out the positive normative foundations of their critique. I think that, in other words, if you criticize something, you have to do it from some normative point. Like, I believe in you. If I say people are not free, up, it means I implicitly at least hold to some notion of human freedom as a positive, great thing, and so on and so on. I think, and here I refer to another of younger generation American Hegelian, Rocio Zambrana. I think that this precisely is not the case with Frankfurt School at its best. Adorno almost turns around this. First, there is a question of, or you are struck with pain, suffering, which cannot be attributed or directly grounded in some normative dimension. There is a gap between this experience of suffering and in translating this into a positive normative structure which allows you to ground this criticism. No, I think suffering, pain, and so on, rage comes first, and the ideological struggle is precisely the struggle for which ideology will appropriate this suffering. It's clear that, for example, Trumpians, like the great, I mean this ironically, leftist Trumpian, Steve Bannon, they sometimes quite nice recapitulate what's wrong in today's world. Individuals exploited by big corporations, blah, blah, blah. But then when they move to accounting for this, you are in racism, sexism, and so on and so on. So I would replace a critique of ideology with quantum science. For me, the true Borromean knot is Lacanian psychoanalysis, Hegelian dialectics, and quantum science. I would add a couple of things. First, quantum physics is much more than this method of how necessity emerges retroactively through global or whatever contingency. I don't think that quantum physics first simply advocates contingency. Many other views do it. With quantum physics, yes, you have contingency, but this contingency is in some sense deeply deterministic. The curve of possible collapses of a certain tendency, multiplicity of wave collapses, is strictly determined by so-called Schrödinger's equation. What interests me in quantum physics is not so much how the collapses work in its strict scientific discourse. All I can say is that there are incredible debates there. You know, not only quantum physicists, but generally scientists like to reproach us philosophers, especially if there is something in our work which smells French, as, oh, these are confused postmodern guys, they can say whatever they want. But this is the situation today of the discourse of quantum physicists. You can say there is a collapse, but then you have different definitions of when it happens, like at the moment of observation, later, and so on. Then you have a very strong tendency again to deny that there is collapse, to advocate the multiple realities version. There is an infinite number of universes. Every possibility is realized just in a different universe. You have the opposite, I call it Deleuzian tendency, where you say quantum oscillations before collapse are like some kind of a free productivity, free open space, and collapse is the first moment of fetishization and so on. So what attracts me really is how these debates in quantum physics are really parallel to the debates in whatever remained of historical materialism. What changed in my view, where I would superimpose my contemporary view to what I was writing years ago, and especially where I now see clearly the distinction between what I am aiming at with the notion of collapse and so on, as a political category, applying it to a social space, and what for decades ago my good friends like Alain Badiou developed like the contingent event also in the sense of a basically contingent, even voluntarist decision, which retroactively structures the field, is that I am more inclined to the quantum physics of the notion of collapse and apply it to history. Namely, the idea is that collapse is not I'm observing a perplexed situation of multiple options, and then I, in the Badiouan way, heroically decide, this is my choice. No, this choice is always a trap. True collapse always happens in a second step. It is, as it were, unexpected. Let me take a mega example. Yeah, Lenin did a great thing. It's incredible. He saw the option, the opening for a revolution. But I'm sorry to say, I think the true collapse happened with Stalinism. This was where we saw what was the true inner potential of what Lenin did. I'm here, still a Leninist, but a little bit more of a pessimist. So I don't believe in subject like in this young George Lukács way, historical agent who transparently knows the situation and heroically decides that's the moment to act. I believe that collapse happens retroactively. You make a choice and the choice has to be repeated because you retroactively afterwards, after your act, discover that you miscalculated the thing. So in other words, I am not a pessimist in the sense of preaching inactivity. On the contrary, I think we should be today totally, in a good sense, pragmatic opportunists. We stick to our principles, but we do whatever is necessary. In certain amounts, we should mobilize people in a democratic way. So in certain situations, sorry. In certain situations, a level of terror can be useful, and so on, even a religious mobilization, whatever. I think this question, what should we do, is open. And I don't like these choices. Like, for example, now in the United Kingdom and United States, the same debate is going on. The left, traditional left, moderate left, Democratic Party, Labour Party, failed. They don't have the answer. And Keir Starmer's Labour Party is losing ground like crazy. Now, of course, the big dilemma is a very modest dilemma, but interesting dilemma. Should we risk forming a new party, or should we still fight in the left wing of the Democratic Party? I think that there is no principled answer. For example, in the situation you follow probably this electoral struggle for the mayor of New York, how is the guy called? Mamdama, that guy, black Muslim even. He's an extraordinary figure. If he will succeed in being confirmed by the Democratic Party and to take over New York, it's a miracle. With all the risks, there will be terrible counterattack. Of course, we should grab this notion, and there are some wonderful surprises already. You know who supported him? Not only the usual suspects, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Bernie Sanders, and so on, but even Barack Obama. And even, beautiful moment, it's crucial, a group of retired policemen supported him. Precisely, they say his ideas may finally enable us to really fight crime. So, but in the United Kingdom, I think the new party that it looks that Jeremy Corbyn with others will form, I would support that opposite decision, because this new party can, I think, mobilize a tremendous disappointment by what Labour Party is doing now. You know that before they even proclaimed their name and organized themselves formally, this new party already has more votes than Labour Party. So you see what I'm saying. It's more open. Let's improvise, try everything. Don't get caught in rules, in choices imposed on you by the enemy.